If I told you right away, I had a 7 o'clock alarm.
Introduce the next.
Person.
Just introduce the next person.
Okay.
So you're introducing Hafez Jabbar.
Hafez Jabbar,
He's
okay.
the father of Tawfiq Abdul Jabbar.
Okay.
And this tells you can say this.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Person that's on the list. So you're introducing Rashida.
How are you? Thanks for asking. Thank you. Oh, of course. Thank you for doing this.
Come on up, everybody. Come on up. Nice and slow.
Nice and tight behind.
Nice and tight.
If everyone who's standing behind could move in a little bit. Do you mind?
No, that's fine.
You want to stand right here?
And feel free to hold up your signs nice and high so people can see them. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you all. Thank you all so much for being here. And I want to start by thanking Osden Bennett, Cindy Corrie, Kamal Musalat, Hafez Jabbar, and Ziad Ibrahim for being with us today to share your loved ones' stories and to insist that we do not rest until we get justice. I also want to thank the members of Congress who are standing with us today to demand accountability. Representatives Chuy Garcia, Rashida Tlaib, Mark Pocan, Summer Lee, Latifa Simon, and Delia Ramirez, who have all been fighting incredibly hard to make sure that we do not drop justice for all of those who have been murdered. Just over 1 year ago, Aishanur Ezgi Agi, a U.S. citizen from my home state of Washington, was killed by the Israeli Defense Forces. Aishanur was a human rights activist observing a nonviolent protest against illegal Israeli settlements in the West Bank when she was killed. The IDF claimed that they had been responding to a confrontation, but an in-depth investigation by the Washington Post found that Aishanur was shot more than 30 minutes after that incident ended and that she was killed more than 200 yards away. Aishanur's father lives in my district. She graduated from the University of Washington, right in the heart of my district, and she had a beautiful and bright heart and a commitment to taking action that helped save lives. I have benefited from listening to Hamid, her husband, and to Osden, her sister, about who she was, underscoring how her death was such a travesty and a tragedy. And I was proud to immediately lead the charge, along with over 100 members of Congress, to demand that the Biden administration launch an independent U.S.-led investigation into Aishanur's death. In private and in public conversations, my colleagues and I pushed over and over again for that accountability with absolutely no forward movement. No transparency, no insistence that the United States protect, at a minimum, our own U.S. citizens against Israeli government forces that have now killed 8 U.S. citizens and countless others with impunity. Today, we are here 9 months into the Trump administration, and we are in the same place. We still do not have a U.S.-led investigation. Aishanur's family is still waiting for justice, and 3 more U.S. citizens have been killed just this year by Israeli forces and Israeli settlers in the West Bank, including most recently Amr Mohammed Sada Rabi, a 14-year-old from New Jersey, Saifollah Musalat, a 20-year-old from Florida, and Kamis Al-Ayad, a father of 5 from Chicago. Recently, I spoke directly to U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee demanding justice for Eichner's family and all the families. And he promised me that he would get answers, that he would demand accountability, but we have not heard anything back again from his office as we have continued to follow up. And so, Ambassador Huckabee, if you are listening, please step up and do what you said you would do, which is demand transparency, accountability, investigation into the deaths of U.S. citizens. Right now, the Trump administration is continuing to allow U.S. citizens to be killed with impunity, even as the Israeli government commits genocide of Palestinians in Gaza. I again want to thank Ozden, Eichner's sister, and Hamid, her husband, and her father for their strength. And I want to thank all of the families here for your bravery and for your willingness to speak out and to not allow the pain of these deaths to just be pushed to the side, but to turn your anger and your pain into an actual demand for justice that will benefit not only the families that are here today, but prevent another senseless murder. I also want to thank all the students at the UW, where Eichner went to college. There was a beautiful ceremony. I was not in town, so I missed it, but it was a beautiful ceremony of people turning out to honor her memory. The American people and these families deserve answers, and the U.S. government has to use our leverage to ensure that the Israeli government cannot kill our citizens and cannot continue to commit genocide of Palestinians. The pattern of impunity goes back decades. In 2003, Rachel Corrie, who's a U.S. citizen from Washington State, and I want to thank her mother, Cindy Corrie, who's here with us today, and who has been a wealth of information for Eichner's family and for so many others. Rachel was killed in Gaza. At the time following her death, more than 70 members of Congress, I wasn't here, but more than 70 members of Congress called for an independent investigation. But just like in this case, no action was taken. And so now, 21 years later, Rachel Corrie's family, including Cindy, are still waiting for justice. As the largest backer of military aid to Israel, we have the leverage and we have the moral responsibility to demand that Israel's government comply with international law and adopt rules of engagement that make clear that the killing of peaceful protesters is unacceptable. U.S. citizens abroad deserve to be safe, and advocates for peace in Israel should have the ability to exercise free speech without fear for their lives. I promise you that my colleagues and I will not rest until we get that accountability and justice. For Eichner, for Rachel, for Saifullah, for Taufik, for Muhammad, and for all of those whose lives matter. I want to thank you again for being here, and I want to turn this over now to Ozden, Eichner's sister, who has been using every part of her life and her platform and her and all of the opportunities she has to talk about what justice looks like.
Thank you for being here today. Today, I'm not just here to mourn the loss of my sister. I'm here to demand accountability from the U.S. government, which continues to shield Israel from consequences even when its actions result in the death of American citizens. It's been 1 year since my sister was killed by the Israeli military. 1 year since the bullet, likely funded by the United States, struck her head and changed our lives forever. 1 year of a future my sister should have lived but didn't get to. 1 year of trying to untangle my grief from my rage. 1 year of missing my sister's laugh. When I remember an inside joke or think of a funny memory, I can still hear her laughter like she's here with me today. And it breaks my heart to think that one day that memory is going to fade. It's also been 1 full year of complete inaction by the U.S. government. In the weeks following my sister's killing, we felt hopeful, perhaps naively, that there might be some action taken by our government to investigate the clearly targeted killing of my sister. We hoped and believed that if they did, maybe Aisha's death would be the last in an ongoing pattern of Israeli impunity. Unfortunately, we're here today because that simply wasn't the case. Not only has the U.S. government taken no action to pursue justice and accountability in my sister's case, they've actively been unwilling to cooperate with our demands. But we know that our government can investigate the deaths of American citizens abroad. In September 2024, the Department of Justice unsealed federal criminal charges related to Americans killed during the October 7th attacks. They vowed to bring accountability. And just days later, my sister was killed by an Israeli soldier in the West Bank. There were no calls for justice for her, no commitment to investigate her unlawful killing by Israel. This government has remained steadfast in their silence to our demands for an investigation ever since. What will it take for the Department of Justice to live up to its name? Why are some American lives worth fighting for while others are not? Why is it that the U.S. government is swift to act as long as the perpetrator isn't Israel? These are questions I want to continue to highlight and demand answers for. Alongside us today are families just like ours who've had their loved ones, U.S. citizens, ripped from them at the hands of the Israeli military and settlers. What you see here is the impact of the impunity our government grants to Israel. It's us. It's these families, these lives, these deaths. This is one of the human costs of continued impunity for Israeli crimes. Sometimes I think, why do they keep killing U.S. citizens? And maybe it's because that they simply can. There have been no repercussions, no sanctions, no consequences for Israel. So why would they stop? 1 year in, I don't want to hear any more condolences from leaders. I don't want to read another story or meet another family who mirrors our own loss. We've heard enough condolences. We've lost enough lives. We've demanded justice long enough, and we've received nothing. I want justice and accountability, not only for my sister, but for Rachel, for Saifullah, for Tawfiq, for Muhammad, and for every U.S. citizen that Israel has killed. I want our government to do something about their deaths. And more urgently, I want to draw attention to the outrageous case of Muhammad, who's Zayed's nephew, who's here with us today. Muhammad is 16 years old. He is a child. He lives in Florida, and he was visiting his family in the West Bank. One night, the Israeli military abducts him from his family home. And for the past 7 months, he's been in Israeli prison without contact with his family. Like, think about that. He's a kid. He's lost a significant amount of weight, has scabies all over his body, and is being held hostage with no trial and no true crime. There's currently no committed path forward to getting Muhammad home. And I'm just confused about where everyone's outrage is about this. Like, we can't bring Rachel or Aisha or Saifullah or Tawfiq home, but we can get Muhammad the justice that he deserves. He's still alive. To the mainstream Western media, if a wrongfully detained American teenager held hostage by another country doesn't make headlines, what will? And if you're listening to me, you're just like me, and you're wondering what you can do, you can call your representatives, you can demand an investigation, you can continue saying Muhammad's name, you can refuse to let our government fund impunity and genocide, you can refuse to let them stay silent and hide behind placating sentiments. And to our government, just return Muhammad home. Look around at the families here today. Is this what putting America first really looks like? And if our government won't stand up for U.S. citizens, what are they really standing for? Again and again, we demand that the U.S. open an independent, thorough, and credible investigation into the killing of my sister and every U.S. citizen killed by Israeli forces and settlers. Thank you, and I'll be passing the mic to Cindy Corrie, who's the mother of Rachel Corrie, also killed by the Israeli military. Thank you so much.
Good morning. I'm Cindy Corrie. On March 16, 2003, my daughter Rachel Corrie, a human rights activist and observer, was killed in Rafah in the Gaza Strip as she stood non-violently to prevent the demolition of a Palestinian family's home. The two brothers who owned the home, a pharmacist and an accountant, their wives and young children watched through a crack in their garden wall as the U.S.-made and funded Caterpillar D9R bulldozer, operated by two Israeli soldiers, ran over Rachel and crushed her to death. Israeli Prime Minister Sharon assured President Bush that Israel would undertake a thorough, credible, and transparent investigation into Rachel's case and report results to the United States. But in May 2003, the Israeli military police closed its investigation and no charges were brought. The Israeli government declined to release its report to the U.S., but staff of the U.S. Embassy, Department of State, and our family were eventually permitted to read it. All noted numerous inconsistencies. For over a decade, our family and supporters throughout this country pursued truth and accountability in Rachel's case through efforts in Congress, at the U.S. Departments of State and Justice, and in U.S. and Israeli courts. In June 2004, the Chief of Staff to Secretary of State Colin Powell wrote to us that he could say without equivocation that the department did not find the Israeli military police report to reflect an investigation that was thorough, credible, and transparent. It is documented in Senate testimony that in addition to President Bush and Secretary Powell, a host of high-level State Department officials raised the matter with their counterparts in the Israeli government. Yet in 2008, Michelle Bernier-Toth, Managing Director of the Office of Overseas Citizen Services at the Department of State, wrote to us, and she said, "We have consistently requested that the government of Israel conduct a full and transparent investigation into Rachel's death. Our requests have gone unanswered or ignored. We will continue to raise this issue with the government of Israel. But unfortunately, at this point, we are not optimistic that the Israeli government intends to do anything further on Rachel's case or investigation." Though the Department of State's position remained that Israeli investigation into Rachel's case was not thorough, credible, or transparent, officials at State and Justice told our family that the U.S. would not conduct an investigation of its own, nor could they force Israel to conduct one to meet their standards. There are to be consequences when countries that receive U.S. military aid use that assistance in contravention of U.S. law and fail to address potential human rights violations. Israel receives billions in military aid annually. Rachel's dad, who is here, often points out that the U.S. government sends two very different messages to Israel. One is the diplomatic request for investigations. The other is the billions of dollars in continuing military aid. Which message do you think the Israeli government hears? If We believe if there had been real consequences in Israel for Rachel's killing and for any of the killings of U.S. citizens that followed, perhaps the other families standing with us today would not have had to make this trip to tell the stories of their loved ones killed by Israeli soldiers and settlers. In 2003, witnessing what was happening to Palestinians in Gaza, my Rachel wrote to me. She said, "Disbelief and horror is what I feel. Disappointment. I am disappointed that this is the base reality of our world and that we, in fact, participate in it." She said, "This has to stop. I think it is a good idea for us all to drop everything and devote our lives to making this stop." Rachel's message is our message today. Thank you, everyone.
Good morning. I'm Congressman Chuy Garcia, and I represent the southwest side of the city of Chicago and nearby suburban communities. And my district touches and includes a small part of the largest diaspora of Palestinians in the entire United States. Locals proudly call it Little Palestine. Despite the intense pride of that community, it's also one that lives with the pain of families displaced and friends uprooted. The pain of checking each morning if their relatives made it through the night and if they're still alive. I'm here today because I refuse to let my Palestinian neighbors suffer in silence. I reject the narrative that we must give military weapons to a regime that bombs schools and hospitals, but cannot investigate the death of 10 U.S. citizens killed by the Israeli military and Israeli settlers since January of 2022. The most recent U.S. citizen killed was a man named Kamis Ayad. He raised 5 children in Cicero, a few blocks down from my home. On the night of July 31st, Kamis awoke to Israeli settlers setting fires outside his home in the West Bank. He rushed outside to put them out, and witnesses say the IDF arrived and fired live rounds and tear gas. Kamis collapsed from smoke inhalation. He died on the way to the hospital. This morning, I'm starting to circulate an oversight letter demanding what all families here are demanding, that the Department of State and the Department of Justice conduct an independent, thorough, and transparent investigation into this killing. I invite all my colleagues to sign on. Kamis was, in some ways, an outlier among U.S. citizens who have been killed. Many of the victims whose families are here today were young, teenagers, and young adults who were visiting relatives or distributing aid or practicing non-violent intervention. And their parents who join us today speak from the unthinkable pain of losing a child. There may never be justice for their killings, but there must be oversight and there can be accountability. The U.S. government must stop using our taxpayer dollars to arm the government that killed their daughters, brothers, and nephews. And that's why we stand with them today. Instead of providing diplomatic cover for escalatory strikes, the U.S. government should support the conditions that make peace possible. And the U.S. government must lead credible through investigations into the death of its own citizens, independent investigations now. Next, I would like to introduce my colleague from the state of Michigan, Rashida Tlaib.
Thank you so much to many of my colleagues who are courageously standing here with families that have been impacted by the lack of accountability and the basic impunity that is set on the Israeli government. You know, when Americans are killed abroad, it's a standard procedure.
for our U.S. government to open an investigation, but when murderers wear Israeli uniforms, there's complete silence. Not only that, they ask the actual government that committed the crime to do the investigation instead of our own government doing the investigation on the Americans being killed. It's now been over a year since Ashnor was targeted and shot in the head by an Israeli sniper. I still remember the images of her body just laying there, again, doing nothing but trying to save lives. And our government still refuses to investigate her murder. Not Biden and not Trump. It is painful enough to mourn our loved one violently taken from you, but to have your own government refuse to do the bare minimum to seek justice of its own citizens, that to me is despicable. I met Ashnor's sister, Azdan, as you know, and her husband, Hamid, when they came here last year, and begging my colleagues. I saw it in their eyes. They were begging my colleagues, please do something. Find some shred of humanity in themselves to do their jobs. And I'm sorry, I want to apologize to them because our U.S. government continues to fail them. That Congress and the White House continue to choose the Israeli apartheid regime over safety and justice for the U.S. citizens. I still remember Omar from Wisconsin beaten to death after playing cards with his family members and leaving. And my colleague Gwen Moore trying to get our government to do something about it. Nothing. I know during their last visit, many people here, many of them, Ashnor's family, asking how many more families will be forced to come here and demand government to hold responsible for the killing of their loved ones and prevent tragedy from repeating itself again and again. I can't even fathom what the Corrie family is going through, watching this happen to more and more families. Today, while we continue to demand justice for Ashnor and so many more, I keep thinking of Saif. Saif, who grew up in Florida, who in July was beaten to death by Israeli residents. Again, these are settlers, you call them whatever you want, but they're Israeli citizens who were targeted while the government watched it happen. They blocked the medical assistance from coming to him. Remember, think about that. An ambulance is trying to come and save Saif. Instead, they blocked it and they busted out the windows. His uncle told me they busted out the windows, preventing the ambulance from coming to try to save Saif's life. And we demand justice for 17-year-old Tawfiq from Louisiana, shot by an Israeli soldier, with the military again blocking emergency responders from reaching them. Again, all this is done by Israeli military watching this happen and doing nothing. We still demand, of course, justice for Rachel Corrie, who I still remember. I still remember the image of her standing so courageously. It breaks my heart that years later, her parents still have to come here and beg their own government to do what is right. We demand freedom from Muhammad Ibrahim. You know, I still say he's 15 years old because, to me, he didn't get to celebrate his 16-year-old birthday because he's in an Israeli prison right now for 7 months. A 15-year-old put in a prison renowned in the Israeli government for abuses. Like so many Palestinian children, he was blindfolded, kidnapped from his family home at 3 a.m. by Israeli soldiers, and has been held again 7 months in an Israeli military prison, famous again for torture and abuse of children. He was forced to spend again his 16th birthday behind bars, scared and separated from his parents, not being able to see them. He has lost over 30 pounds and suffering from scabies, and while the Israeli military denies him food and medicine. And yet President Trump and his administration do nothing. To them, it's okay for the Israeli government to torture an American child. To the parents and family members here, all of your children, your loved ones should still be with us today, and they should not be rotting in Israeli prison. We could be saving Muhammad's life and so many others by doing what is right today. So should the tens of thousands, though, Palestinian children killed by American bombs, enforced starvation and ongoing genocide in Gaza. It's important because I know Rachel would want me to say that today. My colleagues continue to send billions of dollars in weapons to the genocidal military that commits war crimes. And they put violence on thousands of families like ours and theirs every single day. So we say enough is enough. We're standing here because we must honor the lives of our loved ones by demanding that our government stop funding and supporting the Israeli government's genocide and war crimes so that what's happened to our families never happens to anyone again. it is critically important to understand, again, if it wasn't for the fact that the Israeli government committed these crimes against Americans, we again could have been, if we had justice for Rachel, could have saved so many more today. And again, I want to thank my colleagues for continuing to speak truth to power. I'm going to have Kamal, the father, well, not the father, isn't the nephew of Saif here? Oh, the father, yes. Father of Saif. Kamal, if you've ever heard him, I can't understand the amount of strength that he has. But when he saw his son is when he finally broke down and as a father mourning. But I just can't imagine the fact that he doesn't get to see justice for his family. This July, again, Saif, who is he worked at an ice cream shop? It's important to talk about these folks. Ice cream shop owner from Florida who's beaten to death and enabled by our own government. And I'm so sorry that he had to die like that. With that, let's please welcome Kamal.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. My son Saifullah was beaten to death and murdered by a mob of violent Israeli settlers on July 11th. Saif shared that he felt safer because he had an American passport. He used to say, "Don't worry, we are Americans." Yet I am standing here today demanding justice for the murder of my American son by Israeli settlers. While my son's life was stolen from us, these violent Israeli settlers are still free and continue to target our families at this moment. I want to share a bit about Saifullah. Saifullah was my oldest son. He was an older brother to my 3 other children. Saif loved being an older brother. He was a protector. He was known as the responsible one in his friends. At only 20 years old, he was trying to build his credit score. He would tell me, "Baba, look at what my credit score is today. It just went up." Just days before he was killed, Saif told me he was ready to fall in love and get married. And days later, he was killed. Saif was passionate about cars. Even though he knew that cars were not my thing, he would tell me of the cars that he wanted. And I had a plan to help him purchase a car before, and I couldn't do it. He was saving money for his dream car, and I said, I just thought about it that I'll help him, but I never had the chance to share that with him. Saif was just starting his life as a young man. I am here to demand justice for my son, who should be here today. Saif was murdered just weeks before his 21st birthday. He was happy. He said, "I'm finally going to be an adult." He was just starting his life. Saif built a successful ice cream shop in Tampa. Everyone loved him there. Instead of providing my son with guidance on his next steps in life, I am here today demanding justice and accountability for his brutal murder by Israeli settlers. Saif was murdered on his land, our family's land in the West Bank. Until today, Israeli settlers continue to attack our family's land in the West Bank, all with the full backing of the Israeli army, all with the full backing of the Israeli military. We are demanding that the U.S. government act and protect all Americans, including Palestinians and Americans murdered by Israeli violence. How can many more families get killed? No father should have to bury his child in this way. Thank you guys all.
Hi, I'm Representative Mark Pocan from Wisconsin. I want to thank Pramila Jayapal for bringing us together, and I want to thank the family members to share their incredibly difficult stories about what's happened and why we need to have justice, not just for these families, but for so many others who are experiencing violence in the West Bank. The focus has been so much on Gaza and not on the West Bank, and we need to keep that focus on what's happening there as well. I remember visiting communities like Susia that were experiencing violence from illegal settlers in the area, and we have to protect those folks. You'll never have peace unless we can address this violence and address the demolitions and address the settlement expansions You cannot continue to remove a people in the West Bank, which is just another form of the genocide that we're seeing in Gaza. For these families to have to come and beg their government to investigate and to bring justice for their families is something that no family should ever have to do. We need to have the U.S. government do this to put pressure on the Israelis as well, and to make sure we have the release of Muhammad, who's held in a prison right now as someone who is 16 years old. And most importantly, we have to stop the genocide that's happening in Gaza and the West Bank, period. It is not something that's representative of the values of the United States. And finally, Benjamin Netanyahu has been charged by the international courts as a war criminal. He needs to be brought to justice. And the United States, in addition to finding justice for these families, we need to find justice for everyone in Palestine. And that only happens by doing the right thing. And it's far past time for the United States to do the right thing. It may be past due, but it's not too late to get justice for these families. Let's do that. I would like to introduce Hafez Jabbar, the father of Tawfiq Abdel Jabbar. In February of 2024, Tawfiq Abdel Jabbar, a 17-year-old U.S. citizen born and raised in Louisiana to U.S. parents, was killed in the West Bank while driving to a village. Let's welcome Hafez.
How you doing, guys? My name is Hafez Abdel Jabbar. I'm from Louisiana. I'm the father of Tawfiq Abdel Jabbar. I'm an American citizen since 1996. I was 14 years old when I moved here. I got married here. I had my children here. We was brought up and I taught my kids here in schools in America. As alone, when I went to schools and colleges here in the U.S., I was proud and I was happy to be here. We was taught about humanity, human rights, women's rights, liberty. We was taught all these good things. I was teaching them along the way to my kids, to Tawfiq, to Amir, and to all the kids around me, to my family. As we growed up in May 2023, we decided to go to Al-Mizra Sharqiyya to spend a couple of years. On Fridays, we love to go to our lands to have barbecues, spend our time, good times, and that day we received a call that my son was shot. I traveled to the land where my son was. He was in the car. Soldiers directly held the M16s against my chest, not allowing me to get to my son while he was in the car. I refused to listen to them. I tell him, you can shoot me, but I'm getting to my son. I got to my son. I see him in the car, laying down after it flipped 3-4 times. The moment, it was hard for me to see my son laying in the car like this. I picked him up, put him in the ambulance, and he was pronounced dead. Till this day, I have numerous contact with the American consulate in Jerusalem. They came and visited many times. All they keep saying is, we're waiting for Israeli government to give us our investigation, or whether they want to proceed or not, whether they want to prosecute or not. It was 3 different people involved in my son killing. It was a settler, a retired police officer, and an IDF soldier. It was 10 bullets into the car. One of them in the head, it came from the IDF soldier. They know who the killer is, but they refuse to prosecute. Here we are, after waiting 20-some years, and it's still not prosecuting Israeli governments. And why? The question why? I'll tell you why. All these things that we was taught as kids about liberty, about humanity, about it does not apply to the Israeli government only. They have the right and they have the okay from our government to do such things and such act without being punished, without being punished at all. I think that some of these people that work here in this capital, in this building, have lost humanity towards Israel. We have lost humanity towards the Israeli governments that we're not prosecuting them till this day. Saifullah, I talked about Tawfiq. Tawfiq is dead. After that, I'm the one who first got to Saifullah. Saifullah body was discovered by me. It's the same village. We from the same village, and we was hanging the same area 15,000 acres owned by Palestinians. That day we was hanging out there, settlers attacked, IDF soldiers came, they blocked the road, allowed the settlers 2.5 hours to do such things to our kids. I witnessed the beating of 2 American citizen kids that day. One of them was Saifullah Muslim till he dead. I picked him up, he was dead between my hands. I put him in the ambulance and took him to the hospital. He was pronounced dead then. I have a question to the government, to my government. When is this gonna change? All that you taught me was I was a young kid, and I taught my kids about liberty, but yet we support an occupation. About humanity, but we support genocide right in front of our eyes. When is this gonna change? When is the time that we're gonna say that this is enough is enough? And I keep saying, I hope these young generation will make a move. I hope these young generation in America will make a change, because we are waking up. We are waking up. There's the 2 messages that Rachel's mom talked about. That one message is asking the U.S. government to do a thorough investigation, but yet the second day we'll send $200 billion in weapons. So which is the messages they are getting? Are they getting the second message is do whatever you want to do and forget about the first message? And the question the message that I have to the U.S. government, enough killing people. I'm not only talking about American Palestinians. I just landed here from Palestine last night. There's 1,000 gates among the villages of Palestinian people. 1,000 gates since October 7. And they keep asking, October 7, October 7. Thing didn't start October 7. Thing been going on 20 years ago since Rachel was dead. Or they killed Rachel. Or 1948, when they occupied the land of Palestinian. Thing didn't start in October 7. You the creator of October 7, if you want to ask me, as a human being, you created October 7. The government of Israel created that. When are we going to take a stand to stop the killing of people as humanity? As a human being, I'm standing right here. That people are dying just for being Palestinian, it doesn't matter where you're from, whatever citizenship you hold. If you're a Palestinian, you are a target to the Israeli government. And they know that it's okay to do so because they're not being punished. They know the killer of my son after 1.5 years till now, and they have not decided. The last email I got was yesterday, a day before yesterday, from my attorney saying they have not decided whether they want to prosecute or not. And why is it okay? Because these people are not doing anything about it. It's time to make a change. I chose to speak from the heart, not from the paper, but there's a lot of fathers, a lot of mothers. My 9-year-old wakes up every week asking about her brother till this day. My wife struggles till now for simply her son was barbecuing in my land, got shot in the head. And I'm struggling with my wife and my daughter, my 9-year-old daughter. I'm struggling with her to tell her. There's no words for it. I cannot. I keep looking to see what I can tell her, but I can't find the right word. This has to stop. We need to make a change. I hope and I pray to God that this will change soon. This is not what we was taught. This is not what we was brought up on. And this is not humanity, human being. This is just against all humanity. What's going on in Palestine as we speak now. And it's in front of the whole world. Everybody sees this. Thank you.
Yes. Summer Lee from Pennsylvania.
I got it. Thank you, Pramila. And I just want to say I am Summer and I represent Pittsburgh. I'm proud to do so. I don't actually represent any of the families or the loved ones who have been killed by either the IDF or settler violence, but I believe that every member of this body, every colleague that we have should be here standing unequivocally against violence against our own citizens. We all should be standing here against a genocide that we pay for, that we are not just complicit but active participants in, and that if we are going to stand here in anything more than just moral support, that we deserve and that we owe these folks active support right now. There is so little that I can say that could describe the grief and the outrage that these families and our communities have expressed year after year. Ashanor and Rachel, or Tofik, or Saifollah, Muhammad, they all deserve to be home with their loved ones. But here we are mourning and advocating for American citizens who should have been protected by our government, our Constitution, and our laws. Instead, they have been betrayed. Some of their members of Congress haven't even offered them support or a minor word of comfort. In the early days of the genocide, there were planes that were arranged to get American citizens out of Israel. But for the American citizens who were trapped in Gaza, there was nothing. They were left to fend for themselves. I think of the Pennsylvania family whose children were attacked in the bombing as they made their way to Rafah. Right now, there are Pennsylvania American children who are permanently disabled and traumatized because the U.S. government didn't help them to get out in time. The reality is we have one system of treatment for one group of folk and we have another system for another group of folk. Why aren't Palestinian Americans protected in the same way from a foreign government as Americans of any other background? Why aren't there members of Congress standing here with us today? These families, these children, their loved ones who have been murdered or terrorized by a foreign government with no justice and no accountability. What crime did any of them commit? They were children. They were peaceful activists. They were journalists. They were Palestinian. There was no justification to be imprisoned or shot point blank. To be clear, the United States is abandoning its own people to protect a foreign government that does not think twice about us. If there were any other Americans, if these were any other Americans, if this were happening in any other country, we'd be talking about sanctions every day in that place. We'd be talking about investigations not led by the government that committed the crime, investigations by our own government. We would not be probably handing over billions and billions of dollars to equip them with weapons of mass destruction. But what message does it send? That some Americans count more than others, that Palestinian blood is collateral damage, that protecting Israel matters more than the lives, the protection of our own citizens? Because that's exactly what is happening. And we cannot excuse it, we cannot enable it, and we cannot keep writing blank checks to a government that is committing genocide, that kills our own citizens and gets away with it. Every member of Congress whose constituents are here should be ashamed. They should be standing with them. I am proud to stand in their stead. Until then, I will continue to push with my colleagues, continue to push my colleagues for accountability, for an arms embargo, for justice, for freedom for Muhammad and anyone else who was illegally detained, for every person, every child, until they are home safely. And to the family standing here today, I'm so sorry that you have to be here, that you continue to have to show up to advocate, not just for yourselves, not just for your loved one who has already been taken, but for the loved ones who we're trying to protect next. But I will continue to stand with you in solidarity, and thank you so much for being with us. I will bring up next Zayad Ibrahim, who is the uncle of Muhammad Ibrahim. Israeli authorities have been detaining Muhammad for nearly 6 months, as we heard, without trial, for allegedly throwing rocks at Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank. A claim the 16-year-old's family denies while expressing concern for his deteriorating health. He suffers from severe weight loss and scabies. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hello, my name is Ziad Padur. I'm Muhammad's uncle. I'm here on the behalf of his father, who can't be here today. He fears leaving Israel and not being able to go back and be there for his son, who's been locked up for 7 months. Today was a 7-month anniversary of him being locked up. He spent his 16th birthday in prison. On February 16th, he was ripped away from his family, blindfolded, handcuffed, and taken out by 25 soldiers or more, thrown in the back of a Jeep, and we never saw him again. It's been 7 months. We haven't heard his voice. We haven't seen a picture. No phone calls, no visitations. Everything we know from the U.S. State Department. And that comes in small bits and pieces. The information that we hear is very random, and it comes every couple of months. I'm here, and I don't want to be here today. And everybody behind me doesn't want to be here. But this is not a bad dream. This is the reality right now. And we're lucky enough to say Muhammad is still here. And we have a small chance of him not joining the club behind me. And that's the reality of things. That building, this city, has done nothing on their behalf or on ours. Muhammad's 16 years old. His health is very, very questionable. And, you know, we're just feet away from standing on that side and me telling you who Muhammad used to be or who Muhammad was. I think everybody knows I'm not going to be the last person to speak about this subject, and they're definitely not going to be the last of the victims. We can keep on going, you know, over and over and over again. But he's a child. He's a citizen. He's a minor. He's in a military prison. He's sick. He's lost weight. And a simple phone call can get him out. The same phone call that sends billions of dollars there can get a child back to his parents, an American child back to his parents. It shouldn't matter if he's American or not, but in these situations it does. You know, millions of Palestinians are going through the same exact thing. They don't have a red, white, and blue passport. You know, we have this stage to talk to you guys, to explain to you guys what we're about and where we come from. And we hope the people in that building back there hears it too. This sign kind of says it all. We can't bring back everybody else, but we still have a chance to bring Muhammad back. Thank you.
Representative Latifah Simon from California.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Latifah Simon, and I represent California's 12th Congressional District, and that is the historic district once led by the amazing Ron Dellums, who was an internationalist, but should he have been here today, he would, I'm sure, have repeated the quote that he said consistently: "Aren't we American enough? Are we American enough?" Dellums would cry out during the struggle for apartheid, the ending of apartheid in South Africa. So here we are, and I just want to say thank you deeply to the families who have come here today. I know your knees are shaking with grief, with deep grief. And it should be also made very clear that the folks who are standing behind me and the members that have spoke today are in fact those who have been consistently calling for peace. Scripture has made it clear that blessed are the peacemakers, and also blessed are those that mourn. And those are the folks who are right in back of us today with a heavy heart, coming in solidarity with these families and leaders from all over the world, asking one simple question, one simple demand. With their heads held high today, they're talking about the loss, the tragic loss of their sons and daughters and family members who have been killed by the Israeli military and settlers. And the U.S. has not investigated. The U.S. has not investigated the murder, the slaughtering of American citizens. With my colleagues, I want to be clear of what the call is today. You've heard the stories of Americans traveling overseas and being butchered. I'm echoing the call of these families that the United States government must conduct independent investigations, thorough investigations, and provide accountability and answers. Is that too much to ask to a grieving father, to a father of an incarcerated teenager who does not have contact with counsel, who is not being treated as the young child that he is? Is it too much to ask that we get answers for Rachel, who, might I say, whose body was bulldozed? She was an American citizen. We can't accept, we must not accept a foreign policy that abandons the standards, the simple standards of human rights protection. These protections apply to all Americans who travel abroad. That applies to principles of justice for families and fairness for all of us. For all of us. We must choose law over vengeance. We must choose in this time of deep peril all over the country. All of our hearts are mourning for loved ones who were lost too soon, young people who were never able to grow old. Diplomacy over destruction, and restraint over chaos. This, in fact, is the only path to peace. Members of Congress should be saying we cannot slaughter our way to peace. We must demand accountability over all right now. We must demand that the bombs stop raining down on children and families in tents. We must ensure that the families who have received no answers get what they duly deserve. I want to thank again the families in the communities who are waiting for answers, and thank you for sharing your stories today and never giving up for this fight for justice. Thank you all so much. Salam alaikum.
Thank you all so much. I just want to, again, say to the families who are here and who shared their stories, the skies were even crying with us here, and I appreciate that you are here and that you are demanding answers and accountability. We may have, do we have time for a couple of questions? Okay, we have to wrap up because we have met the time that we have reserved the space. But I want you to know that we are not going to stop. And this coalition of members of Congress who has continued to call out to demand justice and to demand consistency, as you heard, with our policy and our demand for investigations, to stop continuing to supply weapons and send money funded by U.S. taxpayers to a government that continues to kill Palestinians and U.S. citizens, and to demand that we get home those who we still can get home. I want to thank you all for being here, thank the members of Congress who came out and stood up, and of course, most of all, to thank the families who came and shared their pain and turned it into a